Today we're going to dive into this really fascinating piece of ancient law, straight from the Book of Numbers. It's a system designed thousands of years ago, but it tackles a problem we still wrestle with all the time. How do you balance that raw demand for justice with the need for mercy, especially when a life has been taken?
No, really, just stop and think about that for a second. You've caused someone's death, but it was a complete accident. It wasn't on purpose. But under the law of your time, the victim's closest relative, this avenger of blood, has the legal right, in fact the duty, to kill you. And there's no police force to call, no one to intervene. It's a terrifying thought, and it's that reality that led to a truly innovative solution, the cities of refuge. So to understand this solution, we have to set the stage a little. And it all starts with the Levites, who were the priestly tribe of Israel. Now, unlike the other tribes, they didn't get one big chunk of territory. Instead, they were given 48 towns, with pasture lands and everything, and these towns were scattered all throughout the land. And that decentralized setup, well, that's the key to what happens next. Okay, now let's look at the problem head-on. This whole system was really built to handle one incredibly powerful and destructive social force, the Avenger of Blood. And we're not just talking about simple revenge here. This was a deeply, deeply embedded legal and family obligation.
Here's the crucial thing you have to get. The Avenger wasn't some vigilante acting outside the law. In a very real sense, they were the law. This whole idea reflects a principle you see in a lot of honor cultures, where family honor is everything, and a death has to be answered with another death to restore the balance.
Wow. I mean, the language from the text itself is just so incredibly stark. There's no room for interpretation, is there? If you were considered a murderer, your fate was pretty much sealed the moment the Avenger found you. It was a swift, personal, and totally legally sanctioned form of capital punishment.
And yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right? What happens when there's no malice, no intent? Does a horrible, tragic accident really deserve the same brutal outcome as a cold-blooded murder? This is the kind of ethical problem that can just tear a society apart with these endless cycles of vengeance.
And this brings us to the absolutely brilliant solution that the text lays out. A system designed specifically to hit the pause button on that cycle of violence and, for the first time, introduce some real due process. So let's see how these cities actually created a path to safety. The whole solution came down to this one number, 6. Out of those 48 Levite towns that we just talked about, 6 of them were given this very special designation. They weren't just regular towns anymore. They were about to become sanctuaries, places where someone could find safety from immediate payback. Now, what's really fascinating here are the logistics and, frankly, the inclusivity of it all. They were placed strategically, 3 on each side of the Jordan River, making sure that one was always within a reasonable distance for someone who was literally running for their life. And get this protection wasn't just for Israelites. It was for any foreigner living among them, too. That's a pretty remarkable principle of equal access to justice.
And that, right there, is the core function. These cities weren't just a place to go hide forever. No, they were a legal safe zone. They were a way to slam the brakes on vengeance long enough to guarantee the accused something revolutionary, their day in court.
You know, this might be the most profound legal innovation in the entire system. It formally brings in the concept of intent. That distinction we make today between murder and manslaughter, it's something we just take for granted. But back then, this was a revolutionary idea. It's literally the bedrock of modern criminal law. And the text gets super specific to help guide the judgment. On the left side, you see these clear signs of intent, or what they call enmity, using an iron weapon, throwing something with malice. But on the right, the examples paint a picture of a total accident, a sudden push without any hatred, throwing something but not trying to harm anyone, or dropping a heavy stone without even seeing the person below. The assembly had to weigh all these facts to figure out what was really in the killer's mind. I mean, the stakes just could not have been higher. If the assembly decided it was murder, the person was handed right over to the Avenger of Blood for execution. But if they decided it was accidental, manslaughter, then the path led right back to the safety of that city of refuge.
Okay, so what did life actually look like for somebody who was acquitted of murder, but was still, responsible for a death? It's not like they could just pack up and go home. There were some very strict rules that governed their asylum.
This breaks down the process perfectly. First, you run. You get to the city. You state your case. Then, you're brought before the community assembly for a real trial. If you're found innocent of murder, you are escorted back to that city of refuge. But, and this is a huge but, you have to stay there. You are living in exile, confined within that city's limits. And your sentence, your time in exile, it was indefinite. It was tied to one single massive event, the death of the current high priest. Now, that might sound strange to us, but the high priest was the one who represented the entire nation before God. So his death was seen as this huge, large-scale atonement that kind of wiped the slate clean. For the person in exile, it was this national reset that finally paid their societal debt and allowed them to go home, totally free from the threat of the avenger.
And check this out. The system had these really powerful anti-corruption rules built right in. If you were a convicted murderer, no amount of money could buy you out of it. And if you were living in a city of refuge, you couldn't just pay a fine to get out early. Justice in this system could not be bought, period. The sanctity of a life was held way above wealth.
This quote really gets to the very heart of the whole thing. The entire system, the trials, the exile, the role of the high priest, it was all designed to cleanse the land. In this worldview, unjust bloodshed wasn't just a crime. It was like a spiritual stain, a pollution that had to be purified through this very strict, fair, and methodical process.
So at the end of the day, what we have here is this incredibly sophisticated legal framework. It protected the accused from mob justice, it introduced the critical concept of intent, and it provided a path for both punishment and eventually restoration. It really forces us to ask ourselves, in our own modern pursuit of justice, how well are we doing at balancing that demand for retribution, our capacity for mercy, and the need for the whole community to heal? It's a lot to think about.